Hello and welcome back to Good CEOs. Yes, it's just me. It's me, you, and 100,000 insights from the creative economy. This episode, we are going to go back on the 5 episodes that we recorded so far this year. And I wanted to spend a bit of time just looking back and going, all right, we've done 6 newsletters, we've done 6 podcasts, and then we've had 3 Good CEOs meetings. At the same time, we have the unknown engine coming across all of these different conversations, 1,000 a month. I've done a lot of speaking, a lot of listening, and a lot of writing. What have I learned? And how can I condense all of that information in a really easy to digest way so you've not got to listen to the other 5 episodes or even read the newsletter? Let's get into it. So the first point came from a man that we named, and we went against our rules in Good CEOs. It was December, there was beer, there was warm wine, there were a lot of opinions flying around. And Toby Southgate at the end had this fantastic answer to the question, what do you predict to happen for the creative economy in 2026? And Toby said a lot of brilliant things, but the one thing that really stood out was the idea that the middle of the industry is falling out. If you listen to when he's speaking, he predicts that the end of the holding company are going to go from 6 to 3. And already that played out. We saw that Omnicom acquired IPG. We saw that WPP fell out of the FTSE 100. We saw that Dentsu struggled to sell their international business. So what was going on was already happening when Toby said that, but then it's played out and absolutely happened.
Big 6, these 6 biggest, currently publicly owned, publicly listed marketing services holding companies, have been for a while. And of course, the 6 is already 5. So I'm not saying I was cheating because I don't think it had actually been ratified when we had our wrap up. It was very, very likely to happen. But yes, that was a discussion we had, and I posited that those 6 big publicly owned, publicly listed, publicly traded marketing services holding companies would become 3 over time. Why do I think there will be fewer? Well, and to be clear on this, I'm not suggesting that 2 or 3 more of them go away. I'm suggesting that their ownership models change and evolve. And most of that is to do with the degree of disruption that is happening in the industry right now. Lots of that has to do with technology in some shape or form, and by the way, I'm talking sort of broadly and in the macro sense, not how is your holding company using AI tools for efficiency? I'm talking about, the vast majority of the S&P 500 value being tied up in 7 companies.
Now, you combine that with what Leland said about the K-shaped economy. If you didn't listen to the podcast, Leland spoke about dollar store or Dior. If we imagine a K, we're seeing this bifurcation. Another word that I've learned and loved is imagining these 2 trees separating, and a branch going one way and a branch going the other. And if you imagine Dior and you imagine a dollar store, the middle, Macy's, Russell and Bromley, the brands that haven't picked a lane, that haven't gone high-end premium or low-end scaled, are struggling because nobody knows what they are and what they stand for, which is brilliant, and it creates a huge opportunity for brand and brand consultancy. PE companies aren't coming to us and saying, I'm looking to buy a business that's doing a little bit of everything. They're saying, I want to buy a business that has scaled this thing. It could be influencer, it could be brand consultancy, it could be advertising. But the key thing that they're saying is, I want specialists that know what they're doing, that have IP in that industry. And I thought that was a brilliant way of combining both Toby and Leland's points. There's a K-shaped economy happening on a macro level, and the middle of falling out of the creative industry.
The K-shaped economy has been happening since the 90s in the US, and I'm pretty positive it's happening elsewhere in the world, but it's a bifurcation of the economy that really came to the foreground during COVID and accelerated, where the middle of economies globally is hollowing out. And that's driven by a lot of different things, everything from technology to policy to, wealth distribution, where capital assets are held and how wealth is being created and so on. But regardless of the reasons for it, the outcome and the ongoing trend is a K-shaped economy and an increasing economy.
And that neatly moves me on to my second point, which is the surge of independence. We're calling it, we're going to see 100 new independents in 2026. We've already started to see this. Why is that happening and what does that mean? Well, if you go back to Alex Lubar, when he was speaking about returning to cottage economics. Now, I had to pretend I knew what that meant. I had done some Googling since that podcast. And you have to remember or see cottage economics attached to the Industrial Revolution. When everyone was forcing people to work in the Industrial Revolution, we were forced to then find businesses from our cottages and we would sell different things. We're seeing a similar thing. The wealth distribution, we're seeing all this money floating to companies like OpenAI and floating to Oracle and floating to Meta, and the FANGs are getting more and more wealthy and they're taking more and more and swallowing all of these things up. And so therefore, that's then creating an opportunity for independent businesses, for entrepreneurs, perhaps frustrated C-level people, to leave their agencies, to leave their brands that they're working at and begin their own thing. So that will mean that we're going to see a rise of independence. Coupling that with AI capabilities, knowing what we can now do, it's so different to 3 years ago. So let alone, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, we're going to see this huge rise. And the cool thing about that is PE, private equity money. If you look at Alex Lubar and Fundamental Co., he has gone to possibly the biggest PE-backed consultancy in the world. Blackstone backing Fundamental Co. Creating value for brands that Blackstone might be investing in. Genius, and a really, really smart way of saying, how can we both make a financial vehicle for us to grow this business together, but also how can we service the people that you're investing in as well? You want to go, your value is brought to people that have a poverty of what you do have, and they have a wealth of what you don't have. Blackstone have a wealth of brands that need branding, brand consultancy, identity, meaning in the world, and they have a poverty of those skill sets. So it's really smart for Fundamental Co. to partner with Blackstone and then come together and say, we are going to create value in the investments that you've made. So this is the kind of brilliant thinking. We're calling it cottage economics, but this for me is so important for anybody that is sitting in a role at an agency thinking, if only I had this, because somebody this morning woke up with all the resources that you need. And they also woke up needing your services, needing your talent. So if you have a talent and you have a poverty of something, whether it's brands, whether it's something that you know you can help, spend time thinking, who can I bring this wealth of talent and knowledge to? Who doesn't have this right now? Because this is the time we are going to see this big surge of independence, and that is super exciting, not only for freedom and autonomy and control over your work of what you're doing, but also for value creation and wealth creation for you and the people that you work with and love as well. This is a brilliant time to start an independent agency and do what you love and get back to the work, which again was a quote from Alex Lubar. Why did Alex Lubar leave possibly the biggest role in advertising, being the global CEO of DDB, to then go and work for a 50-person company? To get back to the work, to have autonomy and to create value again. So I love this point. Small teams can now do what used to require enormous teams. And that was brilliant. Listen to the clip.
I think we will see an ongoing return to cottage economics, right? Where more individuals are able to start more businesses that have more capability than ever before because of the democratization of technology, right? And so, typically, cottage industries were, they existed, or cottage economics existed in a pre-industrialized world, right? And there's a certain irony to kind of returning to that because of the capabilities and the availability to do stuff in much smaller groups. In fact, there's a term that I heard thrown around the other day, which is called a solo unicorn, right? Yeah. Which is, have you heard that? The prediction, in the next 10 years, there'll be, a single individuals that creates $1 billion company, which sounds sort of problematic for all sorts of reasons. But if you dial that back and you kind of simplify it and make it a little smaller, it does mean that, a ton of people can create a ton of things with much smaller groups, because of the technology that exists. That I think is very exciting, right? One of the things that inspired me was coming and joining a smaller group that still had the power to do big things. I think a lot of people would like to be able to do some of the work that they're doing, in a smaller, more human environment. And technology will allow for that, right? And so I think we'll see more and more of it as there are better and better examples of those successes that are out there.
My third learning is the pricing is becoming the game. We've heard so much in the last 2 years about outcome-based pricing, but the issue isn't the idea of producing an outcome-based pricing model that you sell to your clients. Because a lot of the time, advertising agencies, to be honest, nearly every kind of agency is struggling with the concept of outcome pricing because they're not really close enough. If you're just doing communications, even to the level of Uncommon Joker 5 Mother, you're not entirely in control of the output, because that work could be the best work in the world. They could have an awful supply chain. They could have a whole bunch of different things that you're not in control of. So just merely saying you should do outcome pricing isn't enough. And that's why when Leland was speaking about pricing, he said pricing is a creative act in itself. Listen to him talking about this. He does a brilliant version of that.
Pricing is not finance. Pricing is a creative act. It is a creative discipline. It works in numbers, it works in spreadsheets, it works in price points, but it is not a mathematics-related industry or discipline. Price is fundamentally the understanding of value and the exchange of value so that value can be captured. So there's value creation, value communication, value delivery, and value capture. Value creation is literally invention, entrepreneurship. Value communication is what a lot of creative industries have traditionally been tied to because of the nature of distribution and the nature of media. But it's ultimately communicating the value of something. So the willingness to pay is informed by a lot of things. And this is where pricing becomes really creative and not just math. Because price is not a fixed inherent number. You don't look at the production costs of something to distribution costs and say, oh, okay, well, the price has to be that. If you do, which a lot of agencies do, you do something called cost plus pricing. What's my cost plus the margin that I want to make on it? Usually it's 20%. It's a terrible way to price because you're focused on what you want to make, not what the buyer is willing to pay. So WTP is informed by lots of stuff, but ultimately price is contextual, relational, and subjective. All value is perceived value, and willingness to pay is anchored on the perceived value of what you're going to buy.
So the key idea he's talking about there is the buyer's profit is the willingness to pay minus the cost, not just cost plus 20%, and therefore I'm making a profit. The buyer doesn't care about you making a profit. The buyer is buying value for themselves that you have created for them. So approaching that as a process, as a creative process, I think that is how design agencies, creative agencies, influencer agencies, all agencies in the creative economy are going to leap ahead of their competition by using pricing and by looking at pricing like a creative act and focusing on the value that they're creating for their clients versus a time for money, hours. We know that model is old. We know we're moving on from it. The next thing is a thing that I've spoken about quite a lot in the last few months, particularly, and that is that creativity is beginning to meet capital. Why? Why now? Because for a long time, these worlds have not existed together. There's never really been an appreciation from either. I've always said there's a linguistic moat. You've got EBITDA over here and beanie hats over here and you know, all the things that these guys have no idea about. What we're starting to see is that as there's a rise of all of this AI and production and everything can be made so quickly, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's now a rise of attention. If anything, there's less attention now in the world. So the value of design, the value of good creativity has never been more important. So these brands are saying, well, you know, everyone's communicating. They're all saying things. They're creating all this slop. Who do we go to make sure that our thing is going to reach the eyeballs that we need to reach and make them feel the way we want to make them feel? So finance are understanding that investing in brand, investing in social, investing in discoverability is no longer just a nice thing to do. It's essential. It's the only way that you're going to create a premium price for the thing that you're selling. So I love this part with Leland speaking about the power of design, in that design it's not just a wrapper. And I think the other thing that I love Leland saying was the difference between craft and polish. We're confusing the term craft for polish. When you imagine a highly crafted ad or a highly crafted logo, you're imagining a really shiny, beautifully designed thing. We're saying craft starts in the boardroom. We're saying that the craft of how you reach the execution, whatever the execution might be, isn't just an executional aesthetic thing. It's the craft in the way that you get there. You're building the foundations of trust with your brand. You're convincing them in boardrooms that craft and how you do something is so important, and the difference between whether you're succeeding or whether you're not. Number 5, yes, it's about AI. I can't do a podcast without mentioning this. What we're seeing are 2 different camps with AI. You have the maximizers and then the replacers. This is becoming very, very big. Everyone's talking about efficiencies and job losses and everything else. There was a quote that Leland used from a lady called Jenny Nicholson, and that was, "I use AI to do what I couldn't have done before." I use AI to do what I couldn't have done before. We're not talking about bottom line management, efficiencies, speeding up workflows, da 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 da. We're speaking about doing things that have never been done before, that gain rightful attention, that move things on, that open new doors. That's where the value creation is going to come from AI. I don't think we need to be in this kind of bottom line battling each other out for quicker, faster, cheaper. I think that's an important part. I think everyone should figure out what they're doing with AI within their businesses to drive efficiencies, but absolutely prioritizing what you have never done before is super key. Have a listen to Leland speaking about that. I think he nailed it, and I got so much from that part of our conversation. The next thing, very naturally, from AI, we move into human. You're seeing it everywhere. Everyone's been talking about AI slop. Everyone's scrolling through anything that has an M dash in. And so therefore, what's happening? I don't want to read things written by some non-person. I want to read things that are written by a human. So how is our brain telling the difference between a well-polished thing that a human hasn't written and one that a human has? And Laura Tannenbaum puts it brilliantly. Jankiness. It's a new term. I remember the term janky from about 10 years ago, but it's nice to bring it back. Jankiness, mistakes, normal human errors. We're seeing people changing and writing in lowercase to kind of try and game that. But actually, these are things that are just innately human. The mistakes, the ums, the ahs, the filming on a phone versus a high-fidelity ad. All of these things have cultural value now. And that is what is winning genuine attention. So lo-fi, real things, real conversations with real human beings are breaking through. The hardest thing that you can imitate are feelings and senses. So we're expecting to see a lot more of that. Alex put it brilliantly, again, a word that I wasn't aware of, which is dialectic. The idea that you can hold 2 thoughts at the same time that can both be true, and the study of those 2 things creating almost this impact against each other. The better the technology gets, the more there's a drive for human beings to be human beings. It's funny, when you speak to a catastrophizer, they forget this part, they forget the human part, and they go, it'll be robots, it'll be like iRobot, it'll be like Minority Report, oh my God, we're going to lose our jobs, and UBI. True, maybe, but at the same time, think about all of the things that we want as a human race, as a species. We're going to want to be more human. And so we're going to want to deal with more humans in a day-to-day versus this idea that everything becomes automated and soulless. So I love this. I love the idea of the return of jankiness. I love the idea of being more human and how human becomes the premium versus shiny and automated. Listen to Laura talking about this.
Perfection is out and purposeful jankiness is in.
Oh, can you just define the word janky for us?
I mean, it is just a little bit ugly and there are flaws in it. So I think we're seeing so much AI slop, and AI is well known for the M dash. And so when people are taking AI content, they are removing the M dash and putting the little like hyphen instead, just so it signals that AI didn't write this for me. And then I think similarly, you've got cynicism around like overly polished AI work, AI influencers, there's anything that looks like it's too perfect. There's just all this cynicism and trust and rejection of it that we're seeing basically a real swing to anti-polish and more human. And that's, I guess, the jankiness of no, AI could have done this because it feels too messy and too real and too unpolished for it to have been touched by AI. And then I suppose that brings trust back into the equation. People making mistakes, spelling mistakes on purpose to show that there was a human behind it.
My seventh point and my last point is that independents are going to start winning properly now. It used to be that independents would be remaining that way and it was very hard to break through. Whereas now they have all the tools to start. They have such a high level of density to go after. People are crying out to be closer to the work. Not only that, but they can price better now. They can price on workflows. They can price on outcomes. They can price much closer to the value that they are creating, and they don't have to price on hours. So that's a huge shift. And I think the independents that are really focused on being creative with their pricing, considering things like subscriptions, considering things like programs and products, these are the agencies that are going to storm and begin to compete with the holding companies. There's a massive opportunity to go after holding company clients who are becoming dissatisfied with really expensive work. So I'm excited for this. I'm excited. If you look at Laura Tannenbaum scaling fabric by 300% in a year, if you look at all of the agencies that we're seeing bubbling up out of nowhere, Ace of Hearts, Block Report, one of my new favorite tiny agencies that are about to go huge because they put out insights with AI. There are agencies everywhere doing really cool, specialist, valuable things. And if you ever needed another sign as to whether now is the time to consider being an independent and doing things a little bit differently, this is your sign. So that's everything. Those are the things that I've listened and heard and have loved speaking to all of these brilliant people that have joined me on this podcast. For me, seeing these people thriving and growing and trying to do different things has given me energy within my own business. So I'm looking forward to the next season. I'm looking forward to getting even deeper into this. I also want to ask you, we've been quite brand consultancy, social agency heavy. I'd love to know, what do you want to hear more from? Who do you want to hear more from? What do you want to hear more about? Are there things on your mind that you want to ask us? Because I am happy to ask anybody in my network and bring them into this conversation and have a rich conversation with them about the thing that you are thinking about or maybe not thinking about. The one thing I'll leave you with is something that I have tried to land, and I'm trying to make this saying take off. So bear with me on this. As you're sitting there, perhaps you're frustrated, perhaps you're sitting in an agency that you've been at for a long time and you're wondering, why am I not being valued? Why am I not being given the autonomy to do what I do really well? I want you to do this exercise that I've given a few different CEOs who have sat in a similar position in the last few years. Ask yourselves 3 questions. Number 1, what energized me in this last month? Where did I feel like I lost track of time? Where did I feel like I was just full, brimming with electric energy? Right? The answer to that question, whenever that comes up, like, wow, I just felt really energized. Write that down, store it somewhere. The second question, you can guess where this is going. What drained me today? What killed and sucked the life out of my energy that I just wanted to close my laptop and go home? Write a list. Don't stop writing. Get angry, get animated, get bored with what has drained you. Once you look at that and you figure out a bit of a picture, I always say to people, do this over the course of 30 days. On the train home, on the journey home, whatever. Ask yourself those 2 questions and just write the answers from my day today. What has drained me today and what has energized me? Collect that data for 30 days. And then I want you to answer this massive question, which if you can answer this question, you will work for as long as you want within this industry and you will be future-proofed and brimming with energy every single day. And that is this question. Who has a wealth of what I don't and a poverty of what I do? Somebody might have a wealth of brands that are completely useless at communications. Somebody might have a wealth of brands that are useless at branding, at consultancy. There could be a dormant industry like law, no offense law, or finance, no offense finance, who are sitting there crying out for somebody with your skill set. And the next question is, who knows all those people? Maybe I should have a conversation with that person. And the next after that is, What is my skill set? I've just written down all the things that energize me. I know all the things that drain me. I know what I don't want to do with my life. I know what energizes me. Who needs this thing that I love doing? And who doesn't have that right now? Think hard about that. It could be as simple as an advertising agency having a ton of brands that are really bad at design, and their brand and logos and everything else isn't working for them. It could be that you work within an influencer agency and you really want to work at an advertising agency, but they have an absolute poverty of what you have. Think laterally across the industries right now. Now is the time to make a squiggly move, to take a bet, to make an entrepreneurial move and provide what you have, what energizes you, the talent that you have crafted and honed. Someone deserves to have that talent right now. Someone needs that talent. They have a poverty of what you do brilliantly well. So spend some time. If you're sitting there, if you're frustrated, what has energized me, what has drained me, and who has a wealth of what I don't and a poverty of what I do. You're welcome. You're welcome. So that concludes our first season of Good CEOs. I genuinely hope you have found this as interesting and exciting as I have found this. If you haven't, please throw rotten fruit at my house. Or I work at 180 and you can come throw rotten fruit with me there. If you have enjoyed this, please tell me what you've enjoyed about this. If you think there are things that we could be doing more of, I really want to hear. I want to make this your valuable thing that you listen to or that you read where you go, wow, I know something I didn't know, or I feel like I'm not the only person going through what I'm going through. So thank you for listening. Please tell me what you're thinking and have a wonderful Q2.